Hello, you beautiful, amazing people listening to the best podcast, number one podcast in the world, said a girl sarcastically, next to the amazing Savvy Wavy One. How's it going?
You didn't need to tell him it wasn't true. Sarcastically, it is in our hearts.
I can't lie.
In my mom's heart.
I mean, all you listening, it's the number one. But I mean, rationally thinking, it is Joe Rogan.
Yes. I mean, are we equipped to have celebrities on? Yes.
Yeah. Are we both paid $50 million a year? Obviously. Have you seen the car I drive?
Correction, it's $60 million.
Actually,
Isn't it now $150 million?
Him? I think that was he got a 3-year $150 million or some crazy thing.
Call her daddy.
Oh, call her daddy.
Series X.
Honestly, if it's over 10 mil, it's all the same to me.
I agree.
I'm like, you're just rich, or you're rich.
Yeah. Just be nice to get paid for even the equipment we use.
Mm-hmm.
One day we are going to say we made it. We'll play this clip back and be like, nice.
See, Mom, we made it.
See, Mom, we made it.
We did it.
Exactly.
With her. And I'll buy a car one day with my podcast deal.
Okay. Mm-hmm. The day Keltie buys a car, we've made it in podcasting.
Perfect.
Or she's given up.
Or I just went to Sweden and it's cheaper.
Yeah, that too. What would you buy realistically? Would it be a car if we got a podcast deal?
Oh, realistically? was that the first thing?
To celebrate.
To celebrate, yeah. If I had to celebrate, actually I'd a trip with the girls or to go celebrate. If we're talking crazy money, not just moderate, a Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
I would buy a car and a trip and then be rational with the rest of my money.
If you were Alex Cooper.
Yeah, I'd buy a car because I literally don't have a car. So it's not you know what I mean? I'm that feels very rational.
Yeah.
And then have a fun trip. And I'd buy one stupid purchase.
Yeah.
I'd walk into Chanel one day and be I'll take that one. Just something really dumb.
I think this is what we should do.
Okay, tell.
In the perfect world that we get that deal, we would basically fly to Paris first class because renting a private jet is just way too much. But I'll pay first class. We will go first class to Paris. We will shop. And honestly, I don't really know brands. But during that day, I'm going to shop the shit out of these brands. Nobody's going to know what hit them. It's going to be Pretty Woman. When they're I don't even know how to say this word. Is it Gucky? I want it all. That's
Perfect.
what I do.
I'll take a Hermes Birkin.
Oh, I'd get a Birkin. Oh, yeah.
Did you love playing that game? Whenever you walk by, I always do this, walk by a lottery, sign, and it's lottery, 60 million. You always turn to the person next to you, what would you do with 60 mil? And we talk with such great details as if this is actually going to happen. But in my mind, I haven't planned it. Of course.
There was a lottery that we entered that was the mega lottery, and Michael was truly convinced that we were gonna have to disappear in the night once we won it, and he had the whole thing of this is where we're gonna drive to, no one's gonna know our name anymore, and we didn't get it.
Shocker. Or did you? And then you're just lying, and deep down you never know.
I literally, I feel being a podcaster would be the funnest job in the world. In the sense of if that's your full-time gig, call her daddy. She just gets to party and have fun with all these celebrities.
True, but I'm gonna play devil's advocate.
What could you play?
A little devil's advocate. Obviously, the funnest job in the world. But sometimes I look at the Alex Cooper and Joe Rogans. Obviously, we'd both take their spots. But
are you Joe or are you Alex?
Depends on the day. But that's also so much pressure of how much they're ripped apart, the online hate those two have to deal with.
Yeah.
It's next level because people listen and soundbite so many. So you have to accept your image is gone because people edit clips together. People be convinced you're the worst person on earth. Some of them, people hate them. I
bet Alex has really good media training now.
True. And but just even think of how much pressure. It was amazing to interview Kamala Harris. The pressure, to it would be cool, but I was I don't think it we're all oh, you sit down there and yap. I'm oh my god,
you'd want the fun ones where you're yapping. Then you want the Avril Lavigne's, the ones that you geeked out when you were a kid.
Exactly.
Not necessarily the presidential election.
I mean,
she was probably shaking in her boots being do I have to?
Yeah. Honestly, I'd be obviously so honored and it'd be such a cool experience, but also I'm oh my god, okay, right now, what are you asking a president?
Are you actually doing what you're implying?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'd want their take on pop culture. No, I feel like that's like something she would have done though.
I know. Honestly, low-key, that's the podcast I want. I want her to go be like sit beside Donald and Kamala and be like, "What's your favorite Taylor Swift album?" That's the one I want to know.
Definitely. Because I mean, we already know what she's propositioning.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I don't need to hear it on repeat. Tell me what your day in the life looks like. Can we have a vlog, ma'am?
We know the protocols. I wonder what you eat in a day. What's inside my purse?
Yeah. What's in my gym bag? Do you like low impact or high impact workouts?
Are you a Pilates girly or do you prefer HIIT? Are you berries or Legree?
Do you watch The Bachelor? Do you like podcasts? Which ones?
What's on your watch later on YouTube? That's what I want to know. Yes. That's how I've decided my vote for the election. I can't participate.
True crime. Like Amanda Knox.
Yeah. Honestly,
what is her thoughts? Did Amanda Knox do it? That's what I'd want to know.
I'm just going to put it out there. I think we deserve to interview a president after this because that's what a lot of you listening to right now be like, actually, yeah, I do want to know that. Mm-hmm. We would ask the right questions.
Yeah. So you're welcome. So, our doors are open.
So when, they go on Joe Rogan and he asks those questions, just know they came from us. What I eat in a day.
Literally. We're like, wow, it's so girly. I wonder where they got that. Us.
Yeah. Full take.
And all I'm saying is maybe just throw us a bone.
Give us a chance. Give a girl a chance.
Give us $100. And eventually it'll be 60 million.
I love it. Well, considering that, because that's a rather hot take, let's jump into our hot takes. And mine is a little piece of advice because it happened to me and it happened to my best friend's boyfriend yesterday. If you're a Diet Coke drinker, like many of us, and you also, maybe your boyfriend drinks beer, your husband, you drink beer, make sure they're not next to each other. Because a Coors Light and a Diet Coke look similar. And I don't think you actually want to chug a Coors Light at 1 p.m. on a Tuesday. And I've made that mistake. And my best friend's boyfriend did last night because she had I left some Coors Lights in the fridge. And yeah, you just grab it. You just see the silver can. You grab it. And I've done that early. It was like 11 a.m. I was like, oh, I could use the Diet Coke, crack it. And you just take a big swig. And before you know it, you're like, it's half a beer in me. On a Wednesday. And it's not even lunch.
Getting wild.
So just be careful.
Okay. Noted. I like that. Well, on a more wholesome side where you wouldn't be having beer, I was telling Keltie, I feel like, you guys, I'm at the age of 29. I'm at that ripe age of I am fearful of still getting pregnant because I'm not quite ready to be a mommy, but I'm also fearful that maybe I can't get pregnant and that's why I haven't yet. Do you ever feel that way?
No, I feel like, especially now, like everyone's having kids later, that is such a weird thing. Like people in their late 20s, early 30s are both afflicted, being like, oh, you're getting up there, you have times to cook it, at the same time not being ready. It's like a funny thing. Like I feel like everyone's like biological clock, and you're like, oh, did I already miss that biological? Am I still fertile? At the same time, you're like, I'm not ready. I think our ovaries haven't evolved with like the state of our lifestyles. Like, yes. Do you know what I mean? Like I wish we were all built to like have babies at 40. That would be quite
Which we still can.
Yes, of course. But I mean, like, I wish you were still going upward.
Normalized.
And like 40 was peak fertility for 10 years.
Yes.
And then I was like, financially, that would be nice.
Yeah.
That would be nice.
Because like, what a bummer is it that like you have to be, like cognizant of that, of you potentially, me turning 30, being like, okay, well, I got a ripe 5 years of like, before they start being like, oh, you're geriatric. Right?
That needs to change. They call it geriatric pregnancy at 35. I'm like, can we just use a different term?
Yeah. Can we just call it what it is?
Just like later life. I don't even know.
Pregnancy?
Just 35-year-old pregnancy.
Yeah. So that is kind of like a humbling thing. I'm about to exit my 20s and I'm so scared of it. I feel like it'd be a hard birthday. Was it hard for you?
No, because mine was weird because I turned 30 in the panorama. So because of that, like I feel everything was delayed, so it didn't really hit me. Like this year,
did you have like a brain fart? The panorama?
No, it's just a joke. You don't say the pandemic. It's a joke. You say panorama because then you get like YouTube flags you as soon as you start talking about it. So you say anything but now I have to explain for everyone. You say panorama.
Okay.
You mean pandemic, but you're not chronically online like me. So there on YouTube. So you'll say like panorama. You just say something like the PN, everyone knows.
Okay.
Panini. The panini is a good one. You call it the panini.
I would have thought you were losing your marbles if you called it the panini. I'd be like, you lost your panini?
Quite the opposite. I'm that dialed in that I knew not to call it the panorama.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Okay.
Because I turned 30 in it, And it was like such a crazy time. Like couldn't celebrate it really, nothing. Like it almost like passed me by, like not even processing. So we're just like processing through the election. So if anything, hitting like this birthday felt like hitting my 30th. Like I feel like that was kind of, I was like, oh yeah, no, I'm like in my 30s, ready to this, and just like everything you go through definitely feels. And I have a lot of friends like that, like a lot of friends who feel like 2 or 3 years younger than they are, because I think like we in essence lost 2 years of just like milestones. Just think if you like graduated during it or like anything like that. So yeah, I'm like, I didn't feel it then because it almost like didn't happen.
Yeah.
That was a weird time to turn 30.
That is weird. Also, it's very humbling to see. So I was looking at my grandparents' photos, right? Like of their whole life. My grandmother was married by 17. Her husband was 20. And I think they had their first kid at like she was 20, he was 23. And so I was seeing all these photos and I was like, how old are they? And my mom's like 28 with 2 kids at that point. And I'm thinking, oh my God. Like, not a lot of my friends have kids still. And I just can't imagine they were so responsible and just like already had popped out the 2 they wanted in life. And it's just crazy to me that back then you just had them earlier, where now we are slower to getting into things.
Yeah. And just even the crazy, because obviously people still have kids at those ages and in their 20s, but it's like rare. But back then everyone was, so your whole community, everyone's having kids, versus now I feel it doesn't happen till you're like 30s when you hit that age of like all your friends start having kids and getting married. Like that doesn't happen in your obviously it does, but like not to like, it's different. It's like 10 years delayed now.
And I'm like, we're at the ripe age that people like planned this years in advance. All my friends that are pregnant, they planned this. And I'm like, it wasn't an oopsie. They're like, no. Crazy to me.
Planned pregnancies only. Obviously not only, but
that's the goal.
That's the goal. I like it. I like it. We're at that age that you no longer be like, oh, you gonna keep it? You know what I mean? It's like you've been working at this for 4 years. Like, congratulations. It's not are you gonna keep it? It's a congratulations. It's like you've entered that different chapter. As bad as that sounds. Like,
I did though. I mean, I've usually been like really not against having kids, but I'm like not. It seems so far in the future for me. And when I saw my friend's kid, he's a year and a half, and he like wanted me to hold him, and he's just so darn cute. And I was like, oh, I could see liking having one of these. Like, I enjoyed his company. Granted, I'm not with him every day, but I was like, I could see why you want this. Like, it's really cute.
Yeah. And do you also wonder if it has something to do with you not living in a major city? Because I do notice, like, for example, when I'm in like Vancouver or Toronto, just that pull to have a kid isn't as much, because it like seems so exhausting. Like, props to anyone who raises a kid in a city. It's completely doable, but it's different versus in being like quiet town suburbia. Like when I'm in Sweden or when I'm even back in Edmonton, I'm like, oh, this would be lovely. But like when I'm in Vancouver, I'm like, I'm just like, you're here, and I'm like, oh, just the thought of like making sure Sav makes it through Gastown. Like, I'm stressful, let alone a child. Like, I'm like,
I am a baby.
I was like, this is too much stress on me. So I always wonder, I'm like, oh, is there a bit of influence like now that you're not in like Miami and places like that?
But I live in a suburb.
Yeah.
I live in a tiny ass town where they only all have kids.
That's what I'm saying. Like, do you feel like you're more open to it now because you're there, not Miami? You know what I mean? Like, that's what I'm saying.
Oh, no, no matter where I've lived, I've never been open to it. Until now, I think it's like my age. But I'm like, okay, if we're going to do this thing, it's going to be in the next 5 years. Yeah. And it does help that my husband wants a kid, and he's like itching for one. So I'm like, okay, like that's cute. I think, like, as I joke, as it's annoying, I think it's like attractive he wants a child.
Very much so. Better.
But yeah, I could see if I lived here, it'd be definitely more normalized not to. Where I'm like, I mean, not a lot of my friends have kids, but I do have quite a bit, or I just see it in the community.
Right. So I think there's a lot of that major city versus like smaller towns.
Yeah.
Like the New York, LA's versus and Vancouver, Toronto's versus pretty much everywhere else.
Yeah.
If you raise a kid in Vancouver, props to you. Which, let's get into the headlines. And this is going to be a quick pivot because it's nothing to do with kids.
No.
First off, have you seen this on TikTok? TikTok is love working out on the vibrating plates. But do they really work? Have you seen this?
No.
So do you remember those? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Is it like where they like shake your...
So in case you forget, there are those like, there's a couple different ones, but the old school one was like you stand on this plate and it's like vibrating, you hold it with your hands, and it kind of like jiggles you.
Yeah.
And there's other ones, like Equinox has one. And so like sometimes people will do push-ups with their hands on it, or they'll put their feet on there, or you do squats while doing it. And I've seen people do that. And the idea is like stabilizing muscles. Now, this has given me early 2000 diet culture, because I remember when I was like in high school getting ready for grad, I would go to this tanning place to get a tan, and they had one of those, and the girls would be like, do you want to do that? And she would like, they would tell me like how great this is to like give you abs and a booty. And I'm like, of course. So I remember like paying money to stand on one of these things. And I think I told my mom, and she's like, what are you doing? That is such a waste of money. But I was like, no. And like, they explained the science to you. And now to see it like happening on TikTok, like 10 years later, I'm like, oh my gosh.
It's like a gimmick.
Yep. So
do you not think clearly you don't think it works?
So I looked into it. Now, there's a little bit of truth to it because there's a couple ways to obviously build muscle, get stronger. You know, you can lift weights or resistance bands. But another thing we forget is like stability, like stabilizing muscles. Think of like squatting down on one foot. And it's true if you're like on an uneven surface, it forces you to stabilize more. So actually, if you were squatting down on one foot in a vibrating plate, like it's harder to stabilize than flat ground. So it does add resistance. But with that, I'm like, yeah, say it's an elderly person who can't do weights. Maybe it's a way for them to work on stability. Or if you have some kind of muscle wasting, you know, disease or something, could be a great way. And like, it's also one of those things, if someone's really out of shape and they can't lift weights, it's like good to get them started. And like, if you're not healthy, you're not consistently weightlifting and you do something, you're going to see benefits at the start. Now because there's no resistance, you're going to hit plateau real fast. But it's like one of those things I'm like, it's better than nothing, but does that mean it's optimal? Absolutely not. Like, but it's like, it's almost like medical. That's why it's funny seeing these. I'm like, it's like those EMS stimulating things. I'm like, definitely works for someone with like wasting disease. But the average healthy person, I'm like, those machines cost a lot of money. Why not just buy a $2 resistance band on Amazon?
Yeah, definitely.
That's my thoughts.
It might just be like a overconsumption thing where you're like the next big thing.
Yes.
You know, like we've got the ankle weights, and then we got someone who was saying, should I get the weighted vest because it's now trendy? And I was like, it's the same as the ankle weights. Like, just use the ankle weights, you know, like maybe this is just another little thing that they're like, oh, just add it to your list of things to buy. Where I do think resistance bands, a jump rope, weights are like all you really need.
The sad truth about fitness, and I think we all have to remember, is like there's so little you actually have to do. And like, it's so like lift heavy, sprint a little, walk a little, do some relaxation. There's only really like 4 or 5 things. Like everyone tells you the same. Do some mobility, lift a little, run a little, walk a little. How many times can you repackage that? But it's also like everyone has to like, businesses want to capitalize it. So people are going to constantly be like, look, I had the new thing to either get views or sell you something, because at the end of the day, you can only make so much money telling someone to pick up a dumbbell. And I'm like, and just pick it up a little heavier next week.
Yeah.
So I just think like forever we'll be stuck with like the new gimmick, and then we'll forget about this. And then 10 years later, someone comes up and they find one research study that shows you can gain muscle. I'm like, in muscle wasting 80-year-old elderly patients, yes, but not in a 18-year-old healthy, able-bodied individual.
Yeah.
And that's my thoughts.
Okay.
Will you be trying it?
No, I will not be trying it.
There's one on
Equinox. The vibrating... There is?
Yeah, tomorrow I'm going to put you on it.
Oh, okay. I want to go on it. I thought you meant like buying it. I'm like, this probably doesn't even ship to me. I can't even get a treadmill.
You don't want to spend $5,000 just to stand on something that shakes you?
I think I'm good. But I will definitely try it on Equinox.
Good.
So do people get in line for it, or is it not that?
I have never seen anyone use it.
Okay, well, we'll film it for our reels.
Someone will probably film us and be like, those girls actually use that.
I don't know how to work out.
As you're next to like all the like the powerlifting bros on the barbells, and I'm like, oh my god, the TikTok girls are here.
Watch me not be able to even do it. I'm like, oh, this is so hard.
Honestly, watch this eat our words and be like, that was the hardest workout I've ever done.
Yeah, because I think of like a Bosu ball, and like that one's so hard. I'm like shaking constantly.
I see. That's why I was like, instead of being like, oh, I have to go try this vibrating machine, just use a Bosu ball. Just go on a little uneven surface, like just balance like that. There you go.
Shake it up.
Speaking of shaking it up, the best and worst times of the month to strength train. So have you heard of cycle syncing? I think we've even talked a bit of it on the podcast.
Yeah, of course.
So do you ever...
I'm a woman in 2024. I've heard of cycle syncing.
True. You know what you mean? It's kind of fun when things are a little bit like niche, but then eventually it's like, oh, of course, everyone knows what.
I just feel like I always see it online where one of my friends she was like, I'm in my luteal phase. And she was like making all these excuses as why she couldn't do these things with me. And I was like, your luteal phase is like 2 weeks long, girl.
Yeah.
Like,
prepare.
Come on. Yeah. She was like, I'm in my luteal. I can't go to Pilates. And I'm like, you just don't want to go to Pilates. Like, you're going.
Just be honest. So that we kind of run through like the little tips, because I think you see so many of like this and this, it can be overwhelming. But here's like a little rough draft of how you can run little cycle syncing. If you don't know what it is, cycle syncing is in essence shifting around your health routine, so primarily workouts, maybe nutrition, to like influence the hormones you're going through. Because if you didn't know, for some reason, our hormones change every week because we have a menstrual cycle. Sorry to boys listening. You don't know I don't, because you should learn this for the women in your life. So here, quick rundown. The follicular phase, let's just start with your period. When your period begins, your energy is going to be low from the hormones, especially at the start. So this is typically not the time to be like, you know what, I'm going to lift my heaviest, go for my hardest run. Is maybe a time to consider like a deload. Like if you know a lot of workout schedules are like 4 weeks long and, 1 week might lower the intensity. If you can have a really well-timed period, try that out. Then next, you go into your follicular phase. This is right before ovulation, and this is our happy. This is period skinny. There's no bloat. You're feeling good. You're feeling hot. Your body's brewing to make an egg. And this is ideal time that the studies have been shown you're going to be your strongest and have the best endurance. So theoretically, if you're like in your workout cycle, or if you're just like a girl who doesn't do a bunch of heavy lifting or sprinting every single week and you kind of do it a couple times, this is your time. Right after your period, go. And you will be stronger, you'll be faster. And so you might as well take full advantage because you can push yourself harder. Now, after that goes into your luteal phase. Now, this is where I'm like, give yourself some grace, because I've seen a lot of these cycle syncing things, and I'd love to know your thoughts of this. It's like, this week do this week do this. But I feel like especially the luteal phase is so different for some girls. Like some girls get 2 weeks of PMS. Some get 2 days of PMS leading up to their period. Anyways, it's that 2 weeks leading up to your period. And some people, that's worse than the actual period. But just kind of know after the flicker, like your energy is kind of dropping, all this, and like it's not quite your period. But like I know for me, the worst energy is like a couple days before. And during my period, I'm kind of okay. So a deload week would ideally be like the few days before my period. I'm just going to go do easier, low impact walks, Pilates. And in my period, I'm not too bad actually, aside from just like maybe bending over in white shorts, and then just increasing up my weight. And so I think like taking an intuitive approach based on it, but just kind of know follicular right after period, go hard, and then just kind of consider tapering off. And then I'd love to know for like you, because like mine's right before my period, not to give us all your details of your period, but like it's just nice to know you can be intuitive about it.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like I'm like you, where it's always right before I can sense it. I'm like really irritable. I feel like my boobs are really sore. That's always like a dead giveaway. And yeah, but I honestly feel like with my birth control, I don't feel these phases as much. When I wasn't on birth control, I did. I would get sick. My mom would have to pick me up from school, drop things off. Now I'm pretty normal in the sense like I'll feel low energy, but I don't feel the PMS as much, which I'm very happy about.
That's nice.
But I have the Marina, so it's like, not a lot of girls opt in for that, but I was like, save me. They were like, you have really bad periods. Let's put you on this one. I'm like, okay. Yeah.
Also, another thing to take into account is like your hunger, because that's a big thing for me is like when it's leading up to my period, I lose my appetite and I don't know what it is. Like I just have no appetite. I feel swollen. I'm just not hungry. Like I'll have a couple bites of food and I'll just be like, And so like, also I know for me, that means I'm not maybe fueling myself properly for a really intense workout. So I just like naturally, it's kind of like, that's why it's good to time it versus like right after. I'm suddenly like ravenous because obviously like period, I'm like, oh, that's what that was. And then I'm hungry, but also like because I'm getting I'm like actually fueling, getting all this, I'm like, I'm good to go, getting a lot of that. So also like taking into account, it's not so black and white with just energy, but just for me, I know like I'm going to eat a lot right during my period and leading up. So I'm like, this is the time to lift heavy, go on a long run. But when I have no appetite, not the good time to go on a 10K. Yeah. So that's how I kind of think of it.
Also, sometimes the day it hits, I'll be like feeling really good. Yeah. I'll like go for a 4-mile run, whatever. The next day I'll feel like crap.
Interesting.
Yeah. I don't know why. Yeah.
I think it's just learning what works for you. So you'll see a lot of these cycle syncing things on the internet and it's like this energy, do this, but just like learn where your energy goes. And I think it's kind of consistent girl to girl, but it's not like for themselves individually, like week to week, but it's not like we're already so different. Look at how like we're, and so like, why would I do yours when you do mine? And so it's like, just learn your own cycle.
Yeah, definitely.
Now we're going back to TikTok because it's all TikTok. Everything's about TikTok. Myth busting saying. Now I saw this. This was so interesting. I opened up Apple News, and this is the first article on not fitness or anything. It was just the first article on social media and on the list. And this is the highlighted. It was the truth about trend, TikTok's favorite muscle drug. And this was quite frightening to see. It was men's health, but it's like, what is the main thing they're talking about on just TikTok social media? It's how much they're promoting steroids on TikTok and like young men seeing this. And I'm like, we talk a lot about like body positivity, unrealistic beauty standards for women, whether it be, photoshopping, plastic surgery, like harmful diets. Like we talk so much about that, but like not saying one is worse than the other, but it's also mind blowing. Like we don't realize, and like it's eye opening to me, like how many young men are being like shown steroid TikTok. Like it's being normalized to take steroids. That's mind blowing.
Yeah, that's nuts. Did they say like, did anybody come out saying their thoughts on it in the article?
I just kind of breezed through it, and I was like, without like, because once again, I don't want to start like, talking too much about steroids specifically, because none of you came for that, but it was just like interesting to see like the normalization, and even like, what are your thoughts in the sense that like, there's so many kids, like, and kids are going to talk about it, but like, what you do when a 18-year-old boy goes on and is like, this is a cycle I'm on, just like, we could talk about like a Liv Smith even goes on like, oh, this is how I eat to stay skinny, like, and they're just like random people posting these, and I'm like, that's like,
and
it's
also
crazy.
It's like, the younger you get on it, it's like you just have to make sure you're educated. I know some guys that have gone on it and then they're like have a lot of bad side effects and they're like, well, now I have to get off. So it's like you maybe if you were older, you could like prevent that or know what you're getting into, or maybe they blindly lead someone and they think, oh, I want to look like their favorite influencer, so I'll try it. And like they're alive, they're healthy, they're doing it. Or maybe that's like their beauty standard. I mean, that's like a known thing in the fitness industry is that guys are just like roided out majority of the time.
That's what's like like we always talk about. There's just a couple things that we all forget, even myself included. We forget girls that post fitness content, Photoshop, could have a BBL, could be extreme dieting to get those abs, and men are usually on steroids. Like I never think that, which is crazy, but it's even like a reminder for me of like. Because they seem like they're guys we enjoy. Yeah. I love their content. They're nice guys. They're promoting generally great things. But even if everything they promote is great, they could still actually be doing steroids, which is crazy.
Yeah, yeah. I had one of my friends, he paid this guy. He was like, well, he looks like me. Paid him like well over $1,000 to plan his like monthly workouts. Like this guy was top dollar, okay? He shows me him. I'm like, he's on steroids, right? But you could tell. You can just... With us being in this industry, I can tell when a man's on steroids. And he's like, what? And I just go to Reddit, type in the guy's name. He's come out about it. He's admitted he has steroids. And he was like, oh, he just didn't do his research. He thought he was going to look like him. And he had this crazy workout regimen. And I was like, look, you're not going to get to that extent. You know that, right? Like, you can definitely try. But, like, it's not going to be as easy. It's not going to be as short. And he like stopped working with him after because he was like, oh, I feel like this is a little bit of a gimmick. But it is crazy. Even some girls with the BBLs. Like, if you scroll on Explore page, I'll get, like, the booty workouts. Yeah. There's a lot of them. You just know, like, there's no way that is natural. But they don't disclose it. I'm like, if you disclose it, fair game. Do whatever you want, girl. You look great. But it's like, when they're like, oh, this is how I get it. I'm like, oh, that is so sad. Especially if you're not one to, like, naturally grow glutes like that.
Fully. Like, I even remember myself, like, you look at a girl and you're trying, and at some point you have to accept, like, your genetics and stuff like that. And I just think it's... As soon as someone lies, that's the one thing. I'm like, if you're lying, so you're like, oh, this is how I got my body, you don't mention you get steroids. Or if you're like, this is how I got my booty, you don't mention BBL. I was like, if you want to get BBL and you want to do steroids, okay, everyone's entitled to your own opinion, but don't sell programs saying that's how you got it. Unless you're going to be like, that's where I was like, I think that's like, as soon as you have to lie, like you don't have to, at the end of the day, if you never want to say you got plastic surgery, okay. But you can't deny. Like that's as soon as it gets like, I'm like,
be like a Claudia Oshry where she's at least like, this is what I took. I even think, isn't it Remy Bader? Yeah. Like she's taken, I think, Ozempic or maybe something similar. Yeah. And like there was a lot of flack because she was body positivity with her own body and then now she's changing it. Yeah. But it's like, at least she's being honest. And also that's, if she wants to change it, that's up to her, you know?
Yeah. That's an interesting thought just online in general. Like it's so weird that, if you're online for long enough, you can post about something and then you realize you grow up And like, I think about that, especially with young kids, is like, just even think of these kids doing steroids are going to promote all these things and be good. And then one of them has a health scare at 25 and then they're going to have to come out and be like, oh, don't do it. And everyone's like, you lied to us. And I'm like, that's like the weird thing. It's almost like the user just has to be aware that like a lot of these people posting, even us included, are just people going through life and growing. And like, I think it's different when you see a 50-year-old who's fully formed and done it. But like, you're watching a teen, 20-year-old, even early 30-year-old, like, we're all trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
So that's a tough one. So like, I feel for people like that who are like, and they could still be body positive, but like, you know what I mean? And she was like, for her own health, her doctor told her to go on Ozempic, and without getting into that politics, like, that's what worked best for her. And I feel bad that she was like, do you know what I mean? Like, people just was like, doesn't mean she's not body positive. And like, she doesn't. So that's a
I feel like you get put into a box if you were to go online for something. And if you're not that box they painted you as, then they don't know what to do. They don't know how to control it. Yeah. So sometimes I think they're like, maybe know her as that. And then they're like, well, shoot, she now has this new identity. Like, I feel like I look back at my old content and I was so different. And I knew people would make comments to me all the time. Like, my workouts changed, my viewpoint changed. I was so extreme when I was younger. And like, it bit me in the ass of just like my happiness. Yeah. And then I figured out my way to now. But people like fought it, I felt like they would send me messages just being like, you've changed, or like, you're so different now with it. Like, say you want extreme fitness content, I'm no longer that. It's like, you just have to accept to like, hopefully you would want to alter with me or not.
And also the times change. Like, that's another thing. Like, it's funny, I'm working on a video and it was like 50 lessons from 50 fitness challenges. So just a little preview to anyone listening, that's coming in a couple months. But so I reviewed all my fitness challenges I've done, and that was the main takeaway. And it was really fascinating looking at like my old challenges, because like some of those, I'm like, it was almost hard for me to go watch because I'm like, I would not make that content anymore. At the time, it was like a good message. Like, at the time, it was like I said, like my Tom Brady video. Like, it was funny. It was like, at the end of the day, it was this good, like, it's not anything like harmful. Like, luckily I didn't, but at the same time, like, I want to do a 30 days of Tom Brady's diet. Like, it was like, I was like, oh, BuzzFeed did it and I did it. We all just did it. It was fun. It was like kind of lighthearted. And now like we realize like the harm that those things can do, and they have to be like treaded so much more lightly. So there's no way I would do Tom Brady's diet for 30 days. Yeah. I'm like, but at the time I was like, so it's just like interesting reflecting back on those things, and like, there's no way I do that. So going back, it's like, oh, that was me. Like, but it was just like, but I'm like, that was YouTube back then. Like, yeah. So it's just interesting reflecting back on like how it grow, and like people grow up online and watching it, and like times are changing like that. So I find it fascinating.
And some people become moms, or they have maybe a revelation that they don't like fitness, or maybe they have relationships. It is like, I think it's a beautiful thing, but it's also a weird thing. Because I even think my favorite YouTubers, and if they've changed, I don't watch them as much anymore.
True. Yeah. It's like you want them to grow, and because you're growing, like the audience is growing. I always think that, like, sometimes I would feel guilty about changing. I feel really bad about it, but I'm like, I know more now. And like, and so I know it's working more, and like also acknowledge, I'm like, I can't keep doing stuff for 21-year-olds. Like, I'm not talking to 21-year-olds. And I remember feeling that, being like, I'll still do this. I'm like, my audience is growing up too. There's 30-year-olds that watch YouTube. And I was like, allowing myself to grow as well. And I think that's kind of a cool thing now, is like, because we're actually, there's been so much social media. Like, we're the first generations to really do this. So it's kind of like the unknown, but it's like, you can outgrow your content. Yeah. And it's better to do that than stuck in. It's like, you're still doing like slime challenges at 35? Well, like,
you know who I think of is it Brent Riviera?
Yeah.
If you like, he comes up on my TikTok, like him as a person discussion of being like someone said, like, that's my nightmare, is like, you make content for 13-year-old kids and then it's been like 10 years and you're still making the same content. And I actually went to his content. It is still the same content of like fake girlfriends and pranks, and like, I think he's really talented and really funny, but it is so weird. If he probably can't even evolve either, because he's still gaining those young people no matter what. So then people are almost like phasing out of him instead of growing with him. Yeah. Because he's now probably like 20s, 30s, you know? And it's like, at one point you got to admit you don't want to do pranks, or you want to have a family or a wife, or I don't know. I just think it's so weird when some people stay with it. But then again, it's his career. So it works.
There's Disney Channel. You know what I mean? There's sometimes I think that I'm like, there's also people but at least lean into it. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Like, I was like, and then just be like, you know, I'm for kids, and it's the kid channel, and act responsibly, and make sure you have a good message and you're talking to the youth. And like, I think there's that balance, because I'm like, there's kids YouTube. Yeah. So I'm like, if you want to talk to kids, go and be, what's her name? The one that all the kids love?
Mrs. Rachel.
Yeah. I was like, be a Mrs. Rachel. Go fully make sure there's a good story. I was like, if you want to talk to kids, don't go into pranks. Go and just like be the next Blue's Clues. And I'm like, I respect that. Agree. And like have it like a good metaphor to teach kids to share.
I totally agree. Because who do you feel like you grew up with, but did they grow with you? Like who was somebody you liked?
On YouTube? Oh. I mean, the first one that comes to mind is Jenna Marbles. Oh, Rick. I miss her. And see, she grew so much that she had to go offline because she realized what she did was wrong. Like, you're not wrong, but you and me, she had some. She was
wrong.
But she like they resurfaced some videos, and it was one of those things. Like at the time, it was fine, but now, like if you post it, it was like one of those, and like so. But like she means so well. But she did comedy in like 2006, which was way different than now.
Yeah.
And so like I think a lot of people were coming for her, and so she's like just went offline. She just
and she's still off.
She might have a podcast or something. But yeah, no, she's gone. There's no more Jenna Marbles.
Every Wednesday at like 8 p.m. Yeah. She was so funny.
So good. I'm trying to think of anyone else. I'd have to go on my YouTube. I
think of like maybe some Vine people.
I mean, like I would have said Cody Ko up till 3 months ago.
What happened to Cody Ko? You love him.
You didn't hear?
No.
He got majorly canceled.
What?
You didn't see this? You're never on these YouTubers. It was all over YouTube. Yeah, unfortunately, he got canceled. With Tana Mojo, you didn't hear this?
No, why is that girl always in the news?
It's always Tana.
Isn't she like on the canceled podcast?
Yep. So, I mean, the name fits. She's getting canceled.
What happened? Can you tell anybody else?
So as quickly as possible, she was at her live show with Brooke, and you're not supposed to film, but someone was filming, and someone like asked, if you have children in the car, fast forward like 2 minutes. Actually, just shut off the podcast if you have children in the car. The rest of this is not going to be appropriate. She was like, what's the smallest dick you've ever been with, was like the question. And then she was like, oh, everyone's gonna hate me, Cody Ko. And so everyone's like, oh, and it's like, well, it doesn't matter because I was 17. And I was like, oh, so anyways.
And he's older than her?
Everyone does the math, so when she was 17, he would have been 25. So that came out, and like anyway, so you have to go into the whole wormhole. And then like when that came out, like he was still kind of posting, and he just had his kid and was still kind of posting, and then he just hasn't posted since. That was just went offline. And
does Tana feel bad that she
has like full podcasts about it? Like it's really? Like I feel like it's very complicated. Like you have to. It's like such a wormhole. Or it was kind of like when she said it, like just in the moment, and was like, and clearly she's like, it is disturbing that, like, you know what I mean, was with underage, but like she came out with being like, she was clearly scared to go against Cody Ko because like he's was so beloved, and so she was so scared like she would get hate for that. And at the same time, she was even saying, she's like, I kind of didn't feel that bad because she's like, oh, I was doing so much worse things were happening to me. So you know what I mean? It's kind of like if you're getting stabbed, being slapped ain't too bad, but you still shouldn't get slapped. Like it's kind of like that's what she kind of acknowledged it at. But the more she went, she's like, I don't know how this affected me, and like I just it's not right. And like at the time, it was just one of those examples of like she didn't realize how bad it was, and then like looking back, she's like, oh, if I saw a 25-year-old. Like, because she's 25 now, going for a 17-year-old, she'd be like, that's so messed up. But when she was 17, she was like, oh, cool, older guy which is, like, exactly why it happens. Like, a young girl is impressionable, and she just, like, looks up to this older guy. And then, so.
Wow.
That's, if you want to go
only he waited a year.
No, he had to wait, like, 6 months. It was like, buddy, there's a lot of pretty 18-year-old blondes in the world. Like,
it's nuts. You gotta know that's a big no-no, Cody Ko. Like, sorry, you deserved that. Like,
Cody Ko, go.
That's just like, was he even a YouTuber back then? Like, when he have been smart about it?
Well, and there's videos of them because they were doing YouTube together. They did a couple of videos. People resurfaced it. And, like, it's super flirty. And, like, it's like, oh, looking back, but not saying it was okay back then at all. But I mean, it's one of those things we're all blind to it. But now we're so much more educated that we'd be like, a little weird if 25-year-old is flirting with 17. But back then, everyone was like, oh, it's two YouTubers. And now everyone would have been like, get away from her. So it's just like, not saying it was okay then, but I just mean like people didn't put two and two together versus now people are smart.
Wow.
Get away from him.
Can't wait to go down that rabbit hole later.
There it is. It's so, I was like, oh yeah, I grew up with Cody Ko until July. And then we had to go part ways.
Okay.
Rip.
I'm trying to think. I think mine was Jenna Marbles. That was pretty much the only YouTuber I ever watched. I liked Eliza on Vine.
Oh, Eliza was
But she's done really well for herself. She's like an actress now.
She's mainstream. Like she's the goal.
Yeah.
She doesn't even have to post online.
Yeah, I agree. I loved Sarah's Day. I still do. I just don't watch her stuff anymore. I think I just don't watch as much content anymore.
She's one of those people that when I'm in a mood for like mom content or something, I like pop in. I'm like, oh, it's that's cute.
It's still so cozy and like happy, and I just think she's adorable. So she's aged well.
She's a good one.
Yeah,
I feel that whole
she's on babies left and right.
You know what's a crazy one? Where you're like, who's aged? I'm like, there's people who I just started watching 2020. It's been like 4 or 5 years. Like, so sometimes I'm like, define age. Cause there's people I've been like growing up with for 4 or 5 years. That seems like yesterday. But they were like, no, that was like half a decade ago.
Yeah.
I'm like, sure. Oh, wow.
Yeah. Okay, there you have it. Some tea.
There we go.
Oh, my laptop.
Dun, dun.
There we go.
And I just realized the questions are on the phone. Would you mind to pull up one of the questions from our Instagram? Because I was silly and forgot to write it down. Crazy me. But if you didn't know, you can go on our Instagram, Hitting the Bars, and you can DM us if you have a confession session, something you want to get off your chest that happened at work or the gym. Or if you just simply have a little question, a little advice, and we'll give you our unsolicited advice.
Unsolicited?
Yep, I butchered that. I was like, wait, what? So mine was, I'm a European in the US. How do you deal with homesickness and guilt for leaving? I wish I had a full answer because this is something like I deal with, but I think it's just like a couple things is just find ways to incorporate your family into your life and those important and like get a routine. As simple as it is, like me and my mom try and call each other at least for 5 minutes every day when I leave work. And like as soon as I like travel, we have to like, okay, it's in the morning for me or in the morning for her. And after we just like keep with it. And sometimes like, I don't want to call my mom. I'm busy. I'm like, call your mom. You'll feel better after. Yeah. So even if it sounds tiring, like I find we have so much going on and it sounds exhausting, but it actually makes you feel better. So I sit there sometimes when I have a little alarm set on my phone, call my mom. And when I'm like, oh, I'm not in the mood, I'm like, yes, you are. You'll be happier after. So I think just like building the routine of like, we're so lucky to live in time you can FaceTime. And then just like always have something in the future planned. Yeah. Like even like financially, you might be in a place that you can go back every 3 months, every 6 months, every 3 years, but just always have something planned and save up for it. And I think that's having long distance friendships for 10 years is how we've stayed best friends is we always have a girls trip planned. And we try and like, it's later our next one's planned for October 2025. So a full year, but it's just like that, like, we have something to talk about, something to text each other, something to look forward to. And that's how you can like foster the friendships. And then those would be my tips. Do you have any? Because you live away from friends.
Yeah. I mean, I would agree with calling, prioritize that, check-ins, always plan trips. I try and see my parents like at least once a quarter. Like my dad, not as much, but my mom for sure. Like because she can fly easier than my dad can with her job. So I try and see her luckily every 3 months. But it doesn't have to be an expensive trip. I mean, we just take turns. I'll like go see my mom, then she goes and sees me. So it's like you spend the money, then she spends the money. But I mean, yeah, we're so lucky now that like we shouldn't feel guilty when we do have FaceTime. We have accessibility flying wise. Like you should live your life without having to worry like, oh, am I too far away from my parents? But I mean, I miss my parents all the time. I would love to live near them, but it's just not in the cards for me right now. So it's like, you know, one day, hopefully, but for now, I'm just happy doing the trips and that makes me miss them more. Like I just came back from a whole week with my mom and it was like perfect. But I turned into a child. So I'm like, it's almost good we don't live together because I think I'd be like annoying with my mother. I'd be like constantly like, mom, always wanting to hang out. Yeah.
And this could be super morbid, but I've done this and this is so bad and this might make it worse, but it makes it better for me. Is like whenever I get the chance to be with my mom and like you're around, like you're hanging out and all this, for example, like when I said bye to my mom first time, like she always hugs and she always is like, what's it? When you hug someone, the hormone, oxytocin. Oxytocin. Okay. Yeah. When you hug someone, whenever my mom like goes to say bye, she's like, we need our oxytocin. Because if you hug someone for 20 seconds, your body releases it as like the standard known thing. And like, I remember just being, okay, 1, 2. And this time I was like, you do the math. This could be like the 50, lastly, a 1 of 40. You know, I know, I hate to say it, but then you just sit there and I'm like, take in, you know what I mean? Like every moment you're with your parents, with your friends, and that's just life. That's growing old. Even if you like you live close to home, it's just really savor it and just be like, oh, I'm not gonna push her away. I'm not gonna be like annoying hug. Just be like, oh, I want and just like squeeze every ounce of what you get because we don't know. So if you get it, that's what.
So morbid.
It's a morbid, but it did make it like instead of pushing away, because I'd rather soak it in now than in 30 years. Be like, oh, I wish I'd enjoyed hugging my mom more. So
that's one thing I'm like, I will never not prioritize my family. Like even if Michael's like, oh, like you have that trip coming up, like, oh, we were going to do something else, whatever. I'm like, I really don't care. It's like the one thing that matters to me that I'm going to see no matter what. Like no one will ever stop me from seeing my parents because you're right. You're never going to have that chance with them. It's like the one thing I'm like, I will always say yes to them with what they want.
I love that. I love that.
All right. Well, that wraps it up, yeah?
Yeah, let's wrap it up. And thank you for tuning in to another episode of Hitting the Bars. You can subscribe to us on YouTube if you want to see our face. Also, feel free to leave us a 5-star review. You know, I mean, technically you leave 1, 2, or 3, or 4, but, you know, 5s are most appreciated on the podcast or Spotify. And check us out on Hitting the Bars if you want to ask us a question or leave us a funny story. Have a great day.
Bye.